I'm Janet Robb, and I'm the president and CEO of the Arkansas Better Business Bureau. If any of you know Melinda Fauble with AT&T, I've worked with Melinda for a long, long time, variety of community events, and we're friends. And you know, when Melinda asks you to do something, you can't tell her no, and there she is. So I said, of course, I would love to do this, but I really am glad to be here. Like our speaker earlier said, you always say, I'm thrilled to be here, but I really am glad to be here. What we're going to do, we have our four panelists today. Kathy Jean from Magnolia, who's co-owner of Lois Jeans. Natalie Guidotti, who's president of Guidotti Communications. Janet Jones, owner of Janet Jones Company, real estate firm. And Sherry Latimer, president and CEO of CMI. So I'm going to introduce each one of them and ask each one of them to share with you how they came to either open their business or grow their business or develop their business, what factors were considered, what were their successes and challenges, and perhaps most importantly, for the focus of today's primary issue, how did being a woman impact that success? Or sometimes what challenges might that have presented? I want to tell you a little bit about me. I'm a graduate of Hendrix College in Conway, and then I got my law degree from UALR School of Law, born and raised in North Little Rock, and I'm back here today. So I've traveled a very small geographic circle during my life. Out of law school, I worked for a large private practice law firm here in Little Rock and was there for several years. Actually was the first woman partner at that firm, which was a bit of a challenge. I left there and went to work with the Court of Appeals for a couple of years and then opened my own practice. When I opened my own practice, I became especially interested in family mediation and arbitration of disputes. I had seen time and time again where perhaps hiring two lawyers and pitting them against themselves is often not the best way to resolve a dispute. And so I became very interested in alternate forms of dispute resolution. An acquaintance of mine was my predecessor at the Better Business Bureau. She knew I was interested in arbitration. She said, why don't you come and get trained as an arbitrator, because we always have a need for volunteer arbitrators at the Better Business Bureau. I did so, and I really enjoyed doing that. When she left a couple of years later, she said, she called one day and she said, I gave your name to our board of directors. I think you need to come talk to them. And I was slightly less than interested at the time. I enjoyed doing the arbitration. I liked having my own law practice. I enjoyed what I was doing, and I couldn't think of anything more boring than running what she referred to as a little business association. But I went. One of the things that drew me to it was the opportunity to focus on this arbitration and resolution of disputes, because that's a big part of what the Better Business Bureau does. So when the board interviewed me, I was told, it's a small nonprofit. It's not a charitable. It's a membership organization, much like a chamber of commerce. Small staff. You don't have to worry about getting member businesses. We have sales staff that takes care of that. It pretty much runs itself. Well, the first day I went in, my statewide sales staff of 1 walked in and quit. And I realized that the staff of 3 was actually a staff of 2 because 1 had been on extended medical leave. We had no sales program. And even though we're a nonprofit, it's a business model. We have to generate and sustain income. You have to watch your expenses. You have to provide a product or a service that someone continues to want year after year after year. So it was very much like building a business. And in the Better Business Bureau system, there's 106 around the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico, and soon to be Mexico. It's set up much like a franchise operation. Each one is independently governed by a local board of directors, but we do have to meet certain guidelines. So there was a framework there within which to start working and try to build this organization. Long story short, 19 years ago, we had a staff of 2 plus me, and I was very, very green. Annual operating budget of $147,000. Well, today I'm proud to employ 20 individuals here in Little Rock. We do cover the whole state. We have 3,300 member businesses around the state. We had 700 when I started, and our annual budget is about $1.5 million. So there's been some significant growth, primarily because I think we figured out how to provide a product and a service that people wanted. I found out fairly quickly that it was very much like owning your own business, because you're given the framework and the bones of the structure to work with, and now it's your job to try and grow it. I was not afforded the luxury of being able to step into that position and then do nothing but arbitration and resolving the business consumer disputes that really drew me to it in the first place. Because if you own your own business or you're developing your own business, you also have to become an accountant, a technology expert, a building manager, a strategic planner, sometimes a board facilitator. You have to wear many, many hats. And some days you never get the opportunity to focus on that core issue that really drew you to that in the first place. Our panelists today have all been through that same set of challenges, wearing many, many hats. I want to start with Kathy Jean. Kathy is from Magnolia. She is the co-owner of Lois Jeans with her husband, John. She's a 1982 graduate of Southern Arkansas University with a BA in marketing. She joined Lois Jeans in 1982 and worked alongside Lois for 20 years until her death in 2003. She's a member of First Presbyterian Church, where she serves as treasurer in Magnolia. She's on the board of Magnolia Arts and executive board of South Arkansas Symphony Orchestra, past president of the Junior Charity League and Partners in Education, served on the Planning Commission for the City of Magnolia, and is past chairman of Magnolia Blossom Festival. She has a daughter who lives in Houston and a son and daughter-in-law who reside in Fayetteville. She also likes to cook and read, and in the midst of all that, she's running a business. Natalie Guidotti. Natty's president and CEO of Guidotti Communications. Prior to opening her own firm in 2007, Natalie was a senior public relations account executive with marketing, advertising, and public relations firm in Little Rock. Her clients span all industries, including retail, hospitality, software development, healthcare, banking, finance, professional services, and nonprofits. So that's a lot of hats. Natalie has served as special publications editor-in-chief at Arkansas Business Publishing Group. She was editor of Little Rock Family, Arkansas Bride, and Little Rock Guest Guide. Familiar with those communications. Very active community volunteer. She serves on the board for Reach Out Read Arkansas, active volunteer with Holy Souls School, past president of Arkansas chapter of Public Relations Society. She's an active user of social media and one of the founders of LR Tweet Up, which I hope she'll tell us a little bit more about. Because that's an area I think we've all kind of had to learn how to use and leverage, is getting comfortable with that social media platform. So we're glad that you could be with us too. Down at the other end of the table, we have Janet Jones, owner of Janet Jones Company, a Little Rock real estate firm. Her firm has the largest market share of residential real estate in the city of Little Rock. Very competitive industry. She started selling real estate in 1974 and started this company in 1980. So congratulations on a long success. She's a community leader, having served as the first female chair of the Greater Little Rock Chamber of Commerce, and has also served as chair of the Federal Reserve Board of the Little Rock branch. Serves on various community boards, including CARTI, UALR, YMCA, Big Brothers, and Big Sisters. And I like what she says is her very simple business philosophy. It's the golden rule. Take care of your customers and make people happy. So thank you for being with us. And Sherry Latimer is our fourth panelist today. She acquired CMI in 2006, and that's a medical association and care management consulting business, right? Sounds very complicated. Anything healthcare related these days is probably complicated. There are either tremendous challenges or tremendous opportunities in that industry right now. She's responsible for the overall strategic direction of CMI, and since 2006 has served as the executive director of the Case Management Society of America, overseeing the CMI team and implementing the vision and direction of the CMSA Board of Directors. She's a frequent lecturer on topics such as management of chronic and high-risk conditions, case management, medication adherence, integrated care management programs and information systems, transition of care barriers and concerns, and has addressed organizations in the Netherlands, Belgium, and other exotic locales. So she's vice president of care management services at McKesson, or actually served there previously, and also was with the Physician Management Services Organization in Denver, Colorado. So we have got a wealth of experience up here for very different areas of business. And I want to start with Kathy Jean, and I'm going to ask each panelist to tell a little bit about themselves, their company, how they came to either start it, grow it, nurture it, or baby it, and what your challenges and successes have been. So, Kathy, if you'll start, then the others will do the same, and then we'll have some time for questions.
Lois Jean Kelly started the store in 1948. So this month marks our 66th year in business. Lois had grown up in Sheridan, Arkansas, and she moved to Magnolia to attend what is now Southern Arkansas University. When she finished school, she taught for a while, and then she started working during the war years at First National Bank of Magnolia. And at that time, she held a lot of positions that normally weren't held by women. And then as the men were returning from service, she trained them in all these capacities, and then she found herself being passed over for a promotion to the very men who she was training to do the jobs. So in her frustration, she decided to go into business for herself. So with a $500 loan from family members, she decided to open up a little gift shop. And so she took her $500 investment and she bought beautiful lace handkerchiefs and Hallmark cards. And she consigned some gifts, and she worked very hard, very long hours, 6 days a week, and then did her book work on Sundays. It wasn't until the 50s that she started carrying clothes, and she got into designer. She wanted the finest, the best of the best. And quickly, her hard work paid off because she was well known in the South as the mecca of fashion in her little town, and then really throughout the South because people would drive in or fly in to shop with her. I joined Lois in the spring of 1982 after graduating from college. She made certain that I met all of our customers, and she began taking me to Dallas and to New York to do the buying trips with her, and she made sure I met all the designers that we worked with. We usually spent 8 to 10 days in New York 5 times a year, and 4 or 5 days in Dallas about 5 times a year. And most people assumed that I was her daughter. We did eventually become family because I married her nephew, John, and he later came into the business with us. She had at one point given us 25% of the business and said at some point we would inherit another 26%, owning 51%, and then the rest of her nieces and nephews would share in the other 49%. So we would have controlling interest, but the whole family would take part in the ownership of Lois Jeans. Lois passed away in 2003, and we found out upon her death that we had inherited the store 100%. She never told anybody but her lawyer that she'd made this decision, and so we never got a chance to thank her. But we felt like we would thank her by honoring her memory, running the store like she would if she were there. So that's what we continued to do. That is until 2008. In 2008, when the financial market crashed, we found ourselves in a situation where we had a store full of fall merchandise. We had more coming in. We had holiday coming in behind that. We had spring commitments already made for the next year. And nobody was shopping. Everybody was panicked. here we had all this merchandise in New York and in Dallas and all the major cities. The major department stores were putting their merchandise on half price and less, just trying to get rid of it. And this is merchandise that we were just now getting in. We couldn't do that. And did I say nobody was shopping? So we didn't see how we could let any more merchandise come in when we couldn't pay for what was already on our floor. So we decided we were going to have to close the store. So we sent out letters of cancellation to all our vendors. And then we sent out a letter to our mailing list telling our customers, we didn't say those words. I just couldn't make myself say those words. But we did say that we were downsizing and implored people to shop. What happened in the next 2 weeks was basically a miracle. We were bombarded with business. We hardly stopped for lunch. I had a lady come in late one day from Oklahoma, and she said, Kathy, I'm not going to keep you late. I'm checking in. I'm letting you know that I'll be in to shop first thing in the morning. But my husband and I got your note this morning, and I told him we've just got to go help them. Our landlord that we rent parking spaces for our customers came in and gave me a hug and said, rent free for 6 months, and then we'll talk. I had many customers say, first I want to hug, then I want to shop. And literally within 2 weeks, we were able to pay our outstanding bills. We decided maybe we will regroup and let's just see what we can do with this. So we set about calling our vendors, some of whom were going out of business themselves because I wasn't the only store canceling orders. Many of them said, yes, we'll ship you. Many said, we'll give you 90 days, 120 days to pay, which is unheard of in this business. I called one Atlanta rep that I usually work with for a New York collection, and she said, Kathy, I really can't help you. She said, you're going to have to talk to the New York office. She said, Fran, the lady that's in charge of finances is the one you're going to have to talk to. And I'd heard about old Fran, and I wasn't really anxious to talk to her. So I called her late in the day, knowing with the time change that I would get her voicemail and she would maybe have time to stew this over and then, chew me out the next day. And so I called and left that message. And the next day I had a call from her, and it was, hey, Kathy, this is Fran. Thank God Almighty. Welcome back, and thank God Almighty. That's my best New York accent. And they think I have an accent. But anyway, we decided that we were gonna give this a go. And so what we did was we had companies offer us consignment. We could send back what we didn't sell. They gave us every chance in the world to make this a go. And while it was a difficult time for retailers and manufacturers alike, many stores went out. Many stores, little stores like us, couldn't make it. But we continue to carry on to this day. My husband took himself out of the business to get rid of that salary. He says I fired him. I did not fire him. We changed our merchandise mix. We still holding true to what Lois believed in. We still have designer fashions, but we've changed our merchandise mix to include a lot of affordable fashions. I'm always on the lookout for lines that maybe European lines that only show in New York and that don't go to regional markets so that things won't be all around me. So that it gives people a reason to come to Magnolia and shop. There's a sign in the store that says all of our customers bring happiness, some by coming in and some by going out. And truthfully, 99.5% are innies. We meet the most wonderful people and the most interesting people, and so many have become regulars and friends and like family to us. And that's why we continue to stay on. Every day is a different day. The days you can't check off things from your list because there's so many other things coming at you, but it's the reason that we stay is the reason, I guess, people that brought us back from the dead. We do it because we love our customers, and our customers seem to love the store and what it's meant for so long. I would implore and invite you to all come down to Magnolia, get a friend. You could call ahead and let us know you're coming. We'll make sure you have the best time and that it's worth your drive to Magnolia. If you come, you'll see there's a sign in the store, another sign that says anybody who says money can't buy happiness doesn't shop at Lois Jeans. So if you'll come, you'll see why. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Natalie?
Thank you guys for having me. I'm honored to be with these women. So I have had my own public relations and marketing business for 7 years now. I was a ad PR major in college. I went to TCU in Fort Worth, and actually was that weird ad PR major who then went into journalism. And so I did that for 10 years and worked at a business publication in Fort Worth and then moved back home. I'm from Benton, grew up in Benton, and my parents, like weekly while I was in Fort Worth, would send me different job notices and no, I don't want to work there. No, I'm a journalist. No. And finally they faxed me. This is when people faxed. They faxed me a job opportunity in the newspaper that was for a special publications editor for Arkansas Business Publishing Group. And I said, wow, that's actually a real job that I would be interested in. Okay. So moved back home, and I'm so glad because I'm the oldest of 5. So, and all of our siblings are now back here. We've been different places, but we're all here. Met my husband here, so here to stay. But when I got here, I worked for Arkansas Business for 5 years, and that was great. Great experience. I edited all of their magazines, and really kind of started my network from there too. Was did the Leadership Literate program and some different things like that. Was really involved in a lot of volunteer things. At that point, I was not married and didn't have kids, so I had a lot more time to do that stuff. And then decided it was time to go to what my Gwen is a good friend, Gwen would call the dark side. I went to public relations and went to a firm in town and worked for them for almost 4 years, and it was a great experience. But I had just had my first child. I have a almost 9-year-old and an almost 6-year-old. And Nathan was about a year old when I was doing a lot of traveling with that company, and I thought, and I was, and if any of y'all have done this, you know, I mean, I was nursing and I was pumping that whole time, working a full-time job. I mean, it was insanity. So I thought, there's got to be a better avenue here. There's got to be a better way to do this. And I'd always, you know, wanted to be in leadership positions, knew I wanted to be in a leadership position with whatever firm I was with, but had never really actually thought about starting my own firm. And when I started looking at the different options for me, I had a good friend who had actually went out on her own and said, "You can do this. You can do this. You have the network. You have the skills. You should go out on your own." And it was really, really scary because I had a good salary where I was. I was on the management track there, all the things that I wanted to be. And I thought, well, you know, I want to spend more time. And I thought I could do it all too. I wanted to spend more time at home with Nathan, not traveling so much, and have my career. What I didn't realize at that point is you work a whole bunch more owning your own business than you do. So I figured that out really quickly, but it did, and I still say this today, it gives me so much more flexibility to work for myself than to work for someone else. And I work probably many more hours and a lot harder than I did at that other job, but it's all on my own terms and all on my own time. And so if I need to work at 10 o'clock at night or at midnight, which is very often, I can, so that I can be at the school activities, or I can volunteer at the classroom, or do whatever I need to do with the kids. So that really has been amazing. So 7 years ago, I did go out on my own. I immediately got a kind of consulting gig, a regular kind of part-time consulting gig with Axiom. So they were my first client. And that really, I did that for a year, and it was really wonderful because it let me build my business while I had something stable with them. And so that's one thing I would say, and I tell people all the time when I talk about doing this and going out on your own, is if you can kind of find that one gig that's stable, that will let you build the rest of your business, that is really key. It was definitely key for me. So did that for a year, and then after that, some of you guys may know, I have a strategic partnership with a ad marketing firm in town called Eric, Rob, and Isaac. And actually, Eric and Rob used to work at the firm that I did. They left when I was starting there, so we kind of crossed paths. But I had always heard of their names, and I knew that they were about my age, had their own firm. So talked to them during that first year when I went out on my own, and they did not have anybody doing public relations, and they had built up their firm where they had some really good business, but that was one piece of the whole marketing mix that they weren't offering. And so I said, well, here's the deal. I don't want to come work for you because I've got my own thing and I want to do that and I want to build that up, but you need me, I need y'all, let's do this together. So we do have a strategic partnership. I do all the PR for their clients, and then I have my own clients for Good Eye Communications. And it was something that, I went to the table with them and said, here's what I want. It's basically kind of a profit share type arrangement, and it works fabulous for all parties involved. And we've been doing it for 7 years. And I can tell you the big agencies in town that we compete with all the time, Cranford Johnson, Stone, Ward, I know Millie's talking here today, they have all been, I think, very impressed and very curious of how are you making this work. And it's just something that we're dedicated to making work and making work for our clients. And it's where we've been able to bring the best minds to the table for our clients and serve them in a really great way. And so speaking of clients, that is another thing that I feel like has made my company really successful, is I've gotten to work with so many amazing business people in this town, in this state. We do work for Yarnell's, for Iowa Metro, First Security, Alliance Rubber, which is in Hot Springs, which is, who knew? They have rubberband.com. They're the world's largest manufacturer of rubber bands. Did anybody know that? No, probably not. You did. Great. Well, there you go. Amazing company. We do work for Tropical Smoothie, for the North Little Rock School District. We have Mitchell Williams Law Firm. We have clients all across the different industries, and which really makes it fun on a daily basis to all the different things that we get to work on. And in the past year, so for a long time, for many years, it was just me. And sometimes I would pull in freelancers in the area that could help me do writing or pitching media or different things that I needed. Then about 3 years into it, I hired a part-time person who's still with me. And then a year ago, and I've been pretty strategic about the growth too. I've really tried to be conservative with it and, take on a lot myself, just because being kind of that new business owner, I've been nervous about the financial piece of it. But finally, about a year ago, I said, okay, I've got to just kind of take a leap of faith here. And I needed to hire 2 full-time people to help me do what we need to do for clients. And it was a very scary moment for me. I hired one in May and then one in August. And, and the salaries in public relations are healthy salaries. So it was just scary to me to go, oh gosh, now I'm paying 3 people and they depend on me for that paycheck every 2 weeks. But it was something I needed to do, and it pushed me really to say, okay, this is going to happen. I'm going to continue to grow this. And now I've realized it's freed me up to grow the business. It's freed me up where I'm not doing so much of the tactical, where I can do more of the strategic and then, new business growth with that. So that has been a real key. The other thing that I would say has been kind of 2 things that have been very key for me in my growth is definitely the networking. And, I had a really good network when I left the firm that I was with. And I will say a ton of it was through volunteering and community service and boards that I sat on and doing the Little Rock leadership program and different things like that. I'm in the downtown Rotary now, and I know lots of people through that. But that has gave me the contacts to be able to go, okay, hey, I'm out on my own now, and they've met me in other areas besides just business too. So that's helped that they trust me. They know, my values and what I want to do in life. And so that has been a key thing. I think the other thing that's really helped me be a success is just, very focused on customer service. And that really is something that, particularly in our business in the ad and marketing and PR worlds, clients, they can get ads anywhere. They can get PR anywhere. It's really, they need to be able to trust you and know that you're a good counsel to them and that you're always there to answer their email and their phone. And so I think that I have been very focused on that, and that's really helped me. You asked about challenges, and I would say the biggest challenge for me is, because I am a words person and a PR person, has been the numbers part and the business side of my business. And that I've had to learn, and I didn't even my husband's done our taxes in the past. When I went out on my own, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know anything. And I had to learn because I wasn't going to I didn't want him to do that. I need to know how to do QuickBooks and do my business and do the books and figure all that out. So I've learned a lot about that, and still learning. And now that I'm paying employees and doing all that daily, I'm spending more and more time on the financial end and the kind of the running of the business end of that. So I would say that's been the biggest challenge for me. So that's kind of my story, and I know we'll get into Q&A, and I'm happy to answer questions on that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. When I went to the Better Business Bureau, the accounting side, the finance side, was part that I had not done before. Mm-hmm. And suddenly I'm going, how do you figure withholding for an employee? Right. Because sometimes you're not at the point yet where you can hire the payroll company to do that. And so your other choice is you get QuickBooks, you teach it to yourself, and, it's trial and error. Yeah. But it's a little bit scary. I also didn't come from a real strong technology background. And one of the things that we were sorely lacking in when I first went to the Better Business Bureau here was a sufficient computer system. And so we went through a big upgrade, and I remember I went out one Saturday and I met with a data development individual about trying to set up us up a new system, and she kept making reference to this term field. I didn't know what a field was in a database. Mm-hmm. That's how zero-based I was. And so finally I stopped her. I said, okay, you've been here for an hour and a half. You keep talking about a field. What's a field?
Right.
Well, then once she explained it to me, I thought, oh, well, that's not hard. You can't know what you don't know. And it took a while to learn. You got to be able to ask some of those seemingly simple questions, those things that we should know, but we don't. And, that was hard for me to do. Coming from the law background, I always was supposed to have the answers for everybody and to say, I don't know, help me figure this out.
Well,
is a challenge.
Anne was right when she said, marry well, or pick who you want to marry for your career, because my husband is amazing, and he is G'day Communications tech support. So, because I'm not techie either. I'm techie at social media, but when it comes to fixing my computer, no. Somebody will have to do that.
Okay. Janet Jones with the Janet Jones Company.
Janet, if you don't mind, I'm going to come up to the podium.
Absolutely, and I'd love to take a seat for a while.
Okay.
We'll trade.
My seat. I do better standing up to talk. Well, as you know, I'm Janet Jones, and I started the Janet Jones Real Estate Company. But I want to tell you, first of all, that I always feel like my job is to tell you that anybody could do anything, because I run into people, and did for years, that would say, I can't believe you've done what you've done. So I didn't aspire to having this wonderful big business. It's just something that happened. So those of you that are not from Little Rock or haven't seen it, I want to show you. This is our real estate sign, and you may have seen this if you've driven through Little Rock, if you don't live here. We have a wonderful company. We have a great time. We have 35 agents that work for us, and we have 11 staff people. Each year, as Janet told you, we lead in numbers of sales in Little Rock. And we've been in business since April of 1980. And I imagine some of you, how many people were not born by then in 1980? Okay. I love my job. I love to go to work every day. Every once in a while, someone will say to me, well, when are you going to retire? And I say, never, I hope. But let me tell you my story and how it all started. First, I should tell you that I grew up in a home where my mother thought it was unfortunate if a woman had to work. That was the times. And so I had this picture of my life. I was going to live in this beautiful little house with a little white picket fence around it and flowers everywhere. And I was going to have these wonderful little children, and we were just going to have a happy home. Well, it didn't quite work out that way. My husband decided he didn't want to be married, and he left for California to be in the movie industry. And he left me, who was never going to be divorced, of course. He left me to raise 2 little girls and to try to figure out what to do next. In trying to find a job, the first thing I did, I remember sitting on my front porch with 2 good friends, and we looked in the yellow pages to decide something that I could be or do. So that didn't produce a job, so I started applying for jobs. And first I went to a bank and tried to get a job in the correspondent banking department. And I thought I would be a shoo-in for that job. And the lady didn't like me, and she hired someone else. So I went next to a guy that was an acquaintance, and he owned a wonderful new banking software company. And I told him I would like to work for him. And he said, well, let me call you tomorrow. So I think he gave it a lot of thought. And when he called me back, he said, Janet, you can't type. You can't take shorthand. You know nothing about computers. And you certainly are not a salesperson. He said, I'd like to hire you. I really would. But I don't know what you can do. I didn't know what I could do either. I just knew there had to be something. Well, I was so down and out, I ran into a friend, a long life friend, and she said, what's wrong? And I said, no one will hire me. I can't support my children. I don't know what my skills are. I don't know what I'm going to do. And she said, well, my husband, John, who was also a friend of mine, he needs someone to answer the phone at the accounting firm. You can have that job. So she hired me on the spot for her husband. Times have changed. But anyway, I did go to work there, and I answered the phone, I made coffee, and I ran the Xerox machine for tax returns. Some of you may not know what a Xerox machine was, but it's the forerunner to our copy machine now. At the end of the year, I decided I needed a bigger challenge. So I started thinking and looking, and I had seen those tax returns too. So I knew there were people that had some nice incomes out there. Well, I went to a party, and this cute young lady said, oh, honey, you should come sell real estate. She said, we have lots of fun, we make a lot of money, and we don't work very hard at all. Well, I have often laughed about that because if you know much about real estate, it's crazy hours, and it can be really hard if you're going to make a success of it. But nevertheless, I liked the idea. At that time, all the brokers in real estate were trying to add more agents. I think they even paid an agent to bring in a new agent. So I think she even got paid to pull me in. But anyway, you had to be sponsored by a broker in order to work. So I went to her broker, and I think now it's so embarrassing. I said to him, I'm not very pushy, and I'm not very aggressive. And everybody says I'll just get my feelings hurt, but I want to take the class and the test. He said, okay. And he kind of shuffled me out the room after he signed for me. So after I passed the test, I began to think, well, maybe I could do this. And so I called him back, and I said, I'd like to sell real estate. He said, gee, I'm sorry, we didn't save you a desk. We didn't think you were very enthusiastic, so we just didn't think it would work out for you. Well, I went to other places looking for a job, and he called me back. And he said, somebody told me that you might have some potential. And so if you really want to come, I've got this little desk over in the corner. He kind of discounted it. And he said, but if you want it, you can come. So I did go, and I had my own desk and my own Rolodex and telephone. And I had these little cards, and they had my name and my phone number. And I loved my little cards. I gave them out to everyone that I could. I was so happy. If anyone would look at a home with me, I was happy. They didn't have to have money. They didn't have to have loan approval. Sometimes they would tell me, we think our grandmother is going to give us $300, and we hope we can sell our motorcycle for $200, and then we'd have $500 for a down payment. Would you work with us? They had a dream, and I worked hard for them to make their dream come true. I loved every minute of it. Sometimes on Mondays, people would call me and they would say, we went to 5 open houses yesterday and we met 5 different real estate agents, but you were nicer to us than anyone else. You seemed like you really cared. We like you best. We want you to be our realtor. They like me best. That was very important at that time. I worked so hard for 5 years. I worked as hard as humanly possible, showing homes every day. At the end of that time, I learned that the 2 brokers I worked for were splitting up and starting 2 different companies. I decided that if I was going to start a new struggling company, it might as well be my own. So in 1980, I started the Janet Jones Company. In 1981, interest rates soared to 18%. It was almost impossible to sell a house. But we found different creative ways, and we did make it work, and fortunately, interest rates came back down. Our company grew gradually each year. I've had people say they watched my business grow, and they could tell that I had this great master plan, and that I worked my plan each year very carefully. Much to the contrary. I went with my instincts. I went with the flow. I went with the economy and the times, what was going on then. I think that had a lot to do with my business success. But I'd like to pass on some other reasons that I think my business was successful that might help you with future plans. Number 1, hard work. I put in the time. There's just no substitute for showing up, working hard, and putting in the hours. I have a favorite book called The Outliers. Anybody read The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell? Well, he has a real interesting take. He says that we usually think successful people were highly, highly talented. They were just born that way, and they were brilliant or creative or talented. But he says, no, a lot of times they were at the right place at the right time, and that they very purposefully and single-mindedly focused on their endeavor. And he believes in the 10,000 rule. I think this is so interesting. He says anyone that spends 10,000 hours doing anything is going to be successful at it. And I can tell you, I spent way more than 10,000 hours in that car showing homes to little families. Second bit of advice is focus. I kept my major part of my business in front of me always as my focus. I didn't change what I was doing or the area of business. And so often I see someone being very successful at something, but they decide, oh, if I can do this, I'll branch out and do this and this and this. I didn't do that. I knew what I could do well, and I stuck with that. Third is consistency. I've worked with the same goals, the same principles, the same values, the same way of doing business from the very beginning. And honesty. I've not been tempted to cut corners or compromise my principles. And respect. I've tried to treat all people with respect and caring, whether they be the CEO of a large company, a little old lady selling a small home and moving to a nursing home, or the plumber that was fixing the toilet. Above all, I've tried to remember the golden rule every single day. Treat everyone the way you would want to be treated. As a woman in the working world, you have some real advantages. One is patience. You have juggled husbands, parents, children, community volunteer work, running a home, and working, all at the same time. And secondly, communication skills. Women have great communication skills. They're not hesitant to discuss their opinions, their feelings with each other. And collaborations. Women like to work together for a win-win outcome rather than competing with each other. Women like teamwork. There's an old book that I read early on called Tender Power by Sherry Cohen. And she says that it is the instinctive knowledge of warmth and empathy, connection to others and intuition and cooperation that's been women's special strength throughout the ages. Those are the tender traits. Conversely, she talks about the power traits. And those are the traits I heard Ann talking about today. But those were the clout to make decisions and to make money and to change the world and to know about the finances. And she says if you put those tender traits with the power traits, that women are just unstoppable. So my advice to you today is to surround yourself with good people, with high principles. Have fun. Laugh a lot. See the best in people. Don't take yourself too seriously, and foster optimism every day, believing and expecting the very best outcome. This is my philosophy. It's very simple, but I believe it to be true. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Would you? Then I'll take your seat.
All right. We'll play musical chairs. So, well, thank you all. And it's been a real pleasure to sit with such a great team of women business owners. So let me give you just a little idea of how I even got into healthcare. So I am clinically trained as a nurse. I started that. And through my childhood, I had great role models in my grandmother, who was a nurse at Hollywood Presbyterian, and it just felt like I was supposed to be a nurse. But I also had another side that my parents were growing and grooming in me, which was music. And after 13 years of accordion lessons, 5 years of organ lessons, and 5 years of vocal, it was also part of my life at 16 years old. And at 16 years old, I came to a crossroad. I had the possibility of a scholarship to Juilliard, and I also had scholarships going into nursing. So I had a talk with my father. And in the 60s, when you talk with your father, it's usually whichever way dad goes is where you tended to go. And these are my father's words of wisdom. My legal name is Cheryl, and he said, Cheryl, he said, let me be very clear. Singers can starve to death, but nurses can always feed their family. And that meant you need to go to nursing school. So another story I can tell you, I've had a wonderful, wonderful career in music that I can share at another time. But it did send me down a path of learning and giving in what I considered back to all the wonderful things that people do. But it also taught me a lot about business. I've worked in hospitals, I've worked in managed care entities, I've worked in what we used to call general practice, which is family practice or internal medicine. And I've had experience as much in the United States healthcare system as I have in global healthcare systems. I've worked in 9 countries. It also brought me to, after 40 years in 2004, the decision that I really had had enough of corporate America. And I decided that I wanted to step down. I wanted to do something that was driven by me. And so I decided I'd open a consulting business. And I was still working in corporate America, but I was in this transition. It also brought me here to Little Rock to meet with a good friend of mine, Jeannie Bowling, who owned CMI at that time and was executive director of the Case Management Society of America. And we went and had lunch. And I explained to her that it was time. It was time for me to step down and retire and do some of the things that I really wanted, because I saw the opportunity for change. And to make that change, I needed to be in control of my destiny and the things that I wanted to do. I was tired of working for individuals, and in that case, both men and women, who felt threatened by the things that I would suggest, who wanted to keep me at an arm's length for fear that I was going to take their job. which was probably never the case, but also was that paranoia or fear of that process. And I was very tired of giving forth ideas and having those incorporated in somebody else's final report, concept report, and taking credit for it. So I thought I really need to do something different. So we were having lunch at Trios. Anybody know where Trios is? There's been many decisions I've had to make at lunch at Trios, but this particular one, Jeannie said to me as we were talking, she said, Sherry, would you consider taking over CMI and becoming executive director of CMSA? And I said, but Jeannie, I said, that's your company. You started that. And I said, you are the executive director. And here were the words she said to me. Yes, but I am older than you, and it isn't fair that you should retire before I do. So it's really my time. So I went home after I had told my husband I was getting ready to step down, and we had a large discussion. We went to Key West to decide what to do. And on a sunset, sitting there, he said to me, you do what you want to do. You're passionate about what you do, so you make the decision. So I made the decision, and like these ladies here, if you ever think owning a business and going into work for yourself is going to give you more time, that is not the case. I have put in more hours than I have ever done for anybody in corporate America, but I also have received greater satisfaction than anything that I've ever given in my lifetime. And here are the changes that I really wanted to do within the company. And by the way, I have 30 employees. A third of them are men, 2/3 of them are women. And I am very focused on not only having a company that folks are motivated and love to come to work, but have a quality of life on top of that. And my whole IT department is men. I think IT and accounting just is where men go. But anyway, I have hired 2 women now in the IT department, and it really is exciting to have. Of course, the fact that she's 24 years old says a lot, but she is great at the social media side of what we do. But I made a very promise to the folks that I worked with. First of all, there would be major changes. CMI is an association management company, and so we manage professional associations. So one of them is Nursing and Social Work with Physicians and Pharmacists in the Case Management Society of America. Another is a huge national stakeholder organization called the National Transitions of Care Coalition. The members in that are government agencies, large professional organizations. Because of the downturn in the economy in 2008, membership organizations that count on people paying dues often become a hatchet point because of the discretionary funds that you have to choose where you're going to put them. So their growth has been very difficult. Also, when you're working in healthcare, especially with women in healthcare, the average age of CMSA is 55. When Ann was speaking, I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Actually, we're very excited. It was 57, so we're getting younger as we did the survey most recently. But there's so many changes that have to be made that I've really had to work with staff, not only in providing the services, but making sure they understand how quickly association management is changing and the things that we do. I also have the very great opportunity to work internationally. I sit on 2 international boards. Therefore, I am in Europe several times a year and do a lot of work with the healthcare community in regards to a key point that really brought me to having my own company. During my years in corporate America, I worked a number of years on the medical side. Any of you that work in healthcare know that most people choose medical or behavioral. Somewhere along my career, I decided these really do need to come together. After so many years on the medical side, I went to get a job on the behavioral side. Nobody wanted to hire me. Even though I was a nurse, because I'd spent so many years on the medical side, I surely couldn't understand the behavioral side. Somebody, a man, took a chance on me and hired me to the behavioral side. And I worked there for 5 to 6 years and decided I wanted to go back to a medical practice. And guess what? They didn't want to hire me because I had 6 years on the behavioral side. So finally, a man hired me on the medical side, and I began to find doctors that believed like I did. Medical and behavioral services needed to come together. And so that has been something we've developed under CMI. We have one of the only programs right now in the United States in which we cross-train nurses, social workers, physicians, and pharmacists between the medical and behavioral. So instead of having 4 and 5 different providers, You can get to 1 or 2 for contact. And those things that we do bring us to understanding that things are different and they are changed. They are what excite me because I want, and I've tried to create in the company, the ability for people to be creative, to find motivation. Leadership to me is not about always being right. In fact, I've been wrong many, many times. It is the ability to say when you're wrong and to learn from that and to move forward. It also is the right of my staff to make mistakes. Nikki came in yesterday and said to me, "Sherry, please don't fire me." I turned my chair around and I said, "What happened, Nikki?" So a mistake was made. Information was sent out to the membership that was incorrect, and one of our members called, and they're always good at pointing out when we make a mistake. And so, and Nikki had the responsibility of doing that. And I said, "Well, Nikki, it takes a village, and thank goodness we have members out there that tell us, so let's figure out how to change that, but let's also figure out how it doesn't happen next year, because this same process will happen next year." And staff have to be comfortable that work with you, that they can come and say, "I made a mistake," or "This didn't go right." And when we don't have that, then we have things that get covered up underneath. Now, it isn't all roses being a woman in business. Today, because we manage associations, we have elected boards, and I have male chairmen and presidents of those boards, and we have all these interactions that go on. But we've learned over time that we can't be afraid of confrontation. I learned many years ago that I need to be strong in how I feel. I need to be able to share that, but I need to be open to hear when other people have issues and concerns or have a better direction. And I cannot be afraid when somebody challenges me, because challenge often opens the opportunity to go in a different direction, to see something different. How many of us have been challenged in that? And I often tell people, if you say you're afraid of change, your whole life is about change. From the day that you decide to go in a career, from the day you decide to pick a partner, from the day you decide to have children, from the day your children decide, "Please, Mom, kiss me 3 blocks away from the school because I don't want them to see me," to you send them off to college, to all the different things that you do. And embracing that is really a piece that makes us the value we are. And you know what science tells us? We do that better than men. I'll bet that's not a surprise to you. We communicate better than men. How many of you know that with your husbands? How many of you know that with your children? That we communicate. We have better critical thinking skills. When something goes wrong, or someone is done something that really makes me upset, how many of you ever run scenarios through your head? All the things you would say, but you're not going to send that email, and then you write the email you would? Or all the options that you would consider, and then the options that you will choose? Do you know that most men don't do that? Most men, when they're angry, they sit down, they write just what they're thinking, and off it goes, or they just say what they go. But you know what? Usually if that's going to another man, they'll just sort that out, and then they just go on. But women don't do that. We are different. I often talk to my staff about sending email, because we have discovered that there is an email with attitude. Has anybody found that in your company? Yeah. Had a staff walk in last year, throw a piece of paper down on my desk and said, "Look what she said to me." I read it. I couldn't see anything that was wrong. As I tried to sort out with them, I found out they'd had an altercation the day before in the kitchen of a difference of opinions. So no matter what one said or what one read in the email, it was going to be sent with attitude. It was going to be read with attitude. And so those are things that I think I've learned as I've been in business on how to really reach out and help women grow. The other thing that I really like about having my own company is being able to grow women to take my position. If something happens to me today, I have 3 people in my company who could step right in and run the company. One of my folks that's actually here today and is moderating, I supported through the Leadership Arkansas program, and she has grown tremendously. She has, in her career path, she wants to be in Washington, D.C. In 2009, I opened an office in Washington, D.C. I have a public affairs and lobbying office in D.C. And her goal is to be there. And we'll help her get there. and will help each of the women that we work with grow to the piece that they are. So I enjoy what I do. I agree with everything my colleagues have said about you got to have the business sense. You got to have all of the components that go through that. Today we run membership services, accounting services. We put on conferences nationally, internationally, locally, and regionally. We run all of the various marketing and sales components for it, and we have public affairs. And so understanding all of that within the business has really driven me to, I think, the highest level that I ever thought. I remember my father saying to me when I was going into nursing school, I went to a diploma nursing school because I wanted to be able to work with patients. He said to me, you need to go and get your bachelor's, and then you need to go and get your master's. And I said, no, Dad, I don't want to do that because I don't want to sit behind a desk. And over the years, guess what I've had to do? Go back and get the bachelor's. I do sit behind the desk. I've taken graduate studies because I didn't want to continue to grow. So here's the last thing I want to leave you with. We all get up every single day. We go to work and we go home. And work can be any type of process that we do. Some of us call it a treadmill. Others of us see us working and working with a pathway but no progress. And yet within each one of us is the ability to break that mold, to look at how we can make a change and how we can get there and know a pathway we want to take. We call those people innovators. We say they're entrepreneurial. We call them leaders, but they reside inside of each one of us. This conference is about women can, and we can, and you can. If you see that road to take the change, leadership isn't always about owning the business. It's about being a leader where you are and helping other folks do that. And the last thing I'll leave you with is when I see a military person out there, any place, it doesn't matter, airport, anywhere in the country, I go up and I thank them for their service. Wouldn't it be wonderful as women if we could do that and just thank each other for what we do as women in this world of working? Thanks.
Thank you so much. And I loved what Sherry said about emails. I always try and remind my staff, email is a wonderful way to share information. It is a terrible way to communicate. It really is. Every once in a while in our office, we have a no email day. You are not allowed to email other people in the office. You've got to go talk to them. So thank you for bringing that up. Natalie, Sherry, Kathy, and Janet, great to get perspectives on real estate, retail industry, healthcare, and public relations. Y'all have a wealth of knowledge, and thank you so much for sharing that with us this morning. Do y'all have any questions? Now is your opportunity. It's about time to go to lunch. We've almost run into the question and answer time, but yes.
Hi, I'm Phyllis Hodges. I am the CEO of Fit for Life Wellness Center, and I have a question to you as a moderator. This panel, you all have tremendously blessed me. Tremendously. I've learned so much from each and every one of you all. Being a business owner myself, I've been in the business over 30 years, but owning my own business for 13 years. So my first question is, when you all selected this panel, what did you look for?
I can't answer that because I didn't select them. I was gifted. They did, didn't they?
Everybody had information that blessed me. I just pull out my business card, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to give each one of you all my business card because I personally would like to sit up under each one of you all one day. I am so serious. That's great. Thank you. You all just blessed me.
Thank you very much.
And you all have a card that I can have?
And you're right. I mean, great, wide array of knowledge
So different. It was
up
great.
here.
And I'm gonna call you, so don't act like you have amnesia. I'm Phyllis Hodges.
Okay. Any other questions before we break for lunch? I like that motivation. All right. Thank you very much. I'm sure if you have individual questions, come on up. We'll hang around for a little bit.